person that you can, knowing that we're not perfect, but still trying your best. And then that's when you're given the garments that people talk about, the magical underwear, secret underwear that Mormons wear. That's when you're given the garments, and that's taking out your endowments. Endowment is to be endowed, and that's what exactly happened in the temple. You're endowed with the rights and privileges to all the blessings that God has in store for you. That's why we go to the temple. And then after that, if you get married in the temple, it's called a sealing. You're sealed in the temple. The Mormons believe that when you are sealed through the Mormon faith, your marriage is eternal. Outside the temple, we perform ceremonies like any other religious clergyman would do till death do you part. In the temple, I commit to my wife for eternity. So even when we're dead, we'll still be married as husband and wife.
That's very beautiful.
Thanks.
There will definitely be questions about the undergarments. I'm sure you expected that one would not go without questioning. But I want to jump to something else before we get to that. You mentioned that the men have this third part of the priesthood after baptism, confirmation, and then you said priesthood. Is there an equivalent for women?
No, not in the youth's age. When a boy turns 12, he's given what we call the Aaronic priesthood. In the Bible, it's called the Levitical priesthood. The Levites were assistants to the members of that ran the temple for King Solomon. They prepped the temples and they took care of those things. In the LDS faith, ages 12 and 13 are considered deacons. They hold the Aaronic priesthood. 14 and 15, you're called a teacher, still holding the Aaronic priesthood. 16, 17, you become a priest, still the Aaronic priesthood. At 18, you become an elder, and you carry the Melchizedek priesthood. For the girls, the women, when they turn 12, they enter the Young Women's Program. In the Young Women's Program, forgive me, I've never really gone to that much of it, because I'm a guy. The young women have beehives, ages 12 to 13, Maya maids, 14 to 15, Laurels, 16 to 18, and then after that, the women enter what we call the Relief Society, which I've been told is the largest women's organization in the world. The Relief Society's main focus and purpose is to serve, and the priesthood's main goal is to serve. Women do not hold the priesthood in the Mormon faith. It's a huge point of contention for many outside people. They feel that it's a lack of equality. I've asked my wife, who's a very strong feminist, and in her mind, she explains it to me, men can't give birth, and there's a unique opportunity for women that men don't get. Because of that, she's okay not holding the priesthood. She doesn't need it, she said, because she has the ability to bear children, which is a gift that no man will ever have the opportunity to enjoy. Beyond the pain, there's a connection between, I think, a mother and a child that a man will never know. So we're given the priesthood. My wife is my equal. And when people say women aren't equal in the LDS faith, that tries my patience. Because when I sit in meetings and we have women, they're given every opportunity to speak and to share their feelings and to ask for help and rely upon the men as much as the men are upon the women. So in my mind, there's no inequality. My mom has been president of the Relief Society in her congregation multiple times. My wife has been in Young Women's leaderships and Relief Society leaderships many times. So that third step, like I said, is specific for men, but the women they have a different blessing and opportunity in their life that we feel is as important and as necessary as a priesthood.
You mentioned your wife being a feminist, which I think is a movement of sort of pushing for change. Thinking along those lines of the changes in society, have there been changes that you have seen within the church? I think within all religions, there's an evolution of the rules and dogma and beliefs, sometimes because of the external society.
Great question. How to think about that? The church is, right now you have the LGBTQ community pushing hard for equality within religions and just public views. The LDS faith has come out consistently and said, the LDS leadership has come out consistently and said, hey, you are brothers and sisters. We love you. But, there's always that but. The church does say if you engage in homosexual activities, i.e. sex, living together, getting married, then that is not in line with what we believe God has intended for his children. Now, having said that, because that's a very contentious statement, having said that, if you're not married and you're living with the opposite sex and participating in sexual intercourse with the opposite sex, the exact same standard applies to them too. So even straight couples that are not married have to stand on the same pedestal as a gay couple would. That's come with a lot of resistance. There's a lot of turmoil within the LDS faith about gay marriage among the members, but the leadership of the church has been very consistent. But I have seen the LDS church in the more recent years, become more engaged in, like in Salt Lake City, the LDS Church pushed, along with councilmen and city people, to pass a law that made housing no discrimination based on sexual preference. The LDS Church was a big pusher behind that. The LDS Church has put on activities and gatherings. They even have a gaymormon.org, I think is what it is. They even have a website dedicated to homosexual lifestyles. So the church is really, I think, making a step in the direction of saying, hey, we love you, we don't judge you, but in this faith we have certain tenets and rules that we feel are most important. And if you're not willing to follow them, then that's just what happens. I have a niece who is gay. She actually was a student at BYU, Idaho, and was told to leave BYU, Idaho because she was gay. I loved talking to her. She's a dear niece of mine. She understands, I think, that situation better than anybody I've ever met. And so she's a great person to talk to for me to bounce ideas and say, hey, I don't understand this point of view. Can you explain it to me? She's great for that because she loves the church. She grew up in the church. She still loves the church, but is no longer active in the church because she's made the decision to have a partner and who also is LDS. They live together and they both agreed, hey, if we're not willing to live by the church's standards and beliefs, then we're not going to go anymore. We don't hate the church, but that's our choice. And I use these examples because right now that seems to be the most prominent movement at this day and time in my mind when it comes to religions, with the gay marriage issues and transgender issues and things of that nature. The LDS Church has always been firm in their stand as to allowing buildings to be used. Clergy, Mormon leadership is told what we call a bishop who can perform a wedding ceremony is not allowed to use his license with the state to marry gay couples. The LDS Church has said don't do it because we don't support gay marriage. But I said over the years, I've never seen a loosening in the sense of, coffee, tea, tobacco. That's never changed. Churches come out and said don't do tattoos. They've come out and said don't have more than one ear piercing. But I've seen the church become more engaged. The short answer is the church hasn't really changed in respects to loosening up its beliefs or its standards, but they become more engaged in trying to help people understand their beliefs and standards while allowing people to make their own choices.
I have a question for you about the gay marriage issue. In some religions, it seems to be based on certain Bible verses. The one in Leviticus comes up a lot. There's something in Romans that comes up a lot. For others, it seems to be more of a focus on the procreation issue. And if it's a gay couple, procreation via normal or standard route is not possible. Do you know what the rationale is within the Mormon Church, or is it just that decision's made and that's what it is?
No, that's an easy one to answer. God has ordained man and woman to create families, period. We have a statement you can get online called Proclamation to the World, and that explains it in detail. It says, we believe that marriage is only for man and woman because God created man and woman to multiply and replenish this earth. And so I wouldn't call it a procreation argument. I wouldn't loving relationship argument. It is, our belief is held in that God created man and woman for the purpose of creating. He did not create men to love men and women to love women in a sexual manner. We understand the LDS faith, again, has many documented things about same-sex attraction, where the statement is, yes, we understand that you have the same-sex attraction. As long as you're not engaging in sexual activities with the same sex, you can be a full-fledged member of the church. Hold all the blessings and opportunities the church has to offer. But if you engage in same-sex activities, that's when the church comes out and says, okay, now you've gone too far. And that all boils down to, we believe that the natural man is an enemy to God. So it's our duty in this life to, which is your temporal and worldly desires, your desire to have sex, an enemy to God. Learn to battle your passions and your desires in order to live the life. An alcoholic does not have the freedom to do what they want because they're bound to drink. And a recovering alcoholic, and I have a cousin who's LDS, who's a recovering drug addict, has said that, yes, he felt free until he realized he wasn't. And now that he's no longer a drug addict, he has to take extra precautions to stop being friends with certain people, to stop hanging out at certain places so that he's no longer given the temptation to partake in the world of drugs. So in our faith, they said as long as you're living God's standards, you can be a full member of the church. No questions about it, whether you're gay or straight. Because a straight couple, if they're married, are within the bounds of what God wants. If you're not married, then you are outside his bounds, and therefore you can no longer partake in all the blessings and opportunities the LDS faith has to offer.
If you are outside the bounds, can you come back into the church if you change your behaviors? Or once you're out, you're out?
No, you can always come back. I don't know anybody personally that is, well, I take it back. I do. I have a good friend that at one point was addicted to pornography. He had a level of leadership within our congregation, and they released him. They said, look, take 6 months. Here's a plan of repentance, back where you need to, and come back and say what we call being disfellowshipped from the church. With the church, in the sense that you go to church every Sunday and you do all the things that Mormons do for the most part, but you don't get to go to the temple for that time being. After 6 months, we revisit is how have you done for 6 months? Have you gone over your addictions and problems? And if you haven't, then let's give it another 6 months. And if you get your life back in order, by all means, you come back to the church, full fellowship, you're ready to rock and roll, as though nothing had ever happened. With the exceptions, there's always the exceptions. If you're a convicted child molester, if you're a convicted felon, then in order for you to come back into the church, that has to go through the first presidency or the prophet of the church. It has to be submitted to him for approval. Because of the severity of the sin, everybody is concerned about the safety and welfare of those that they're around, especially children. So if you've been convicted of and I knew a guy that was convicted of child molestation, and the church said, yeah, you can be a full-fledged member of the church, but there's certain restrictions. You can never be in the men's and women's program. We're going to watch you closer than we typically would because we want to make sure that you're not going after those carnal, worldly desires again. So we want to help you, but here's some restrictions to help you not fall back into what you're doing because the church always has children running around.
I want to ask, you mentioned the document that talks about man and woman and family, which that's a very rudimentary summary, but family seems to be very important within the LDS Church, and most people, or many people, associate large families with the LDS Church. What is the reason for that in your faith? Can you speak about that a little bit?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great question, too. I have 6 kids. My wife came from a family of 8. I came from a family of 5. Again, when I spoke earlier about the temple and you're sealed for time and eternity, we believe that the entire family is sealed. So my kids are my kids now and in the future and after death. And then their spouses will be sealed to them. And it's one big family for generations, for millions. We're one big family. We believe that literally every person is a child of God. And because of that, every person on this earth is a brother and a sister. Because God created each and every one of us. We were brought to this earth through, a mother, of course, but we believe that every person has a spirit. And that the spirit is given to us through God. God created us before we got here in a spiritual form. The spirits get the bodies on this earth. When we die, our spirits leave our bodies and go up to heaven. Again, very rudimentary explanation, but in essence, that's what it is. And so family matters, and we have large families because we want to bring children to this earth. We want to give those spirits waiting bodies. And we believe that, we have an ability to bless their lives. And so that's why we do it. Some people have 2 kids. Some people have no kids. Some people adopt. And having a large family within the LDS faith is not a rite of passage, like some people would think. Adopting children is no different than having children, in my mind. And I've never been taught otherwise in the church. So the church tells us, please have kids. But if you can't, then please adopt kids. And if you can't, then please be nice to everybody. I think there's a misunderstanding out there from people that think we have to have large families. We don't. We believe in birth control. My wife and I used it. I got brothers who've used it. It's part of life. While we say have large families, be responsible. Don't have 13 kids when you can't afford 13 kids. Don't be, don't say I got 13 kids and I make $20,000 a year. That's just dumb. We had what we felt we could handle and we stopped. And so I think that'd be the best way to look at it.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. This question I don't fully understand. It may be along the same lines. Maybe it will make sense to you. Someone asked, why do Mormons baptize anyone in their genealogy pool into the Mormons if they do this?
It does. It's called baptisms for the dead. So what happens is the LDS faith believes that, like every other Christian religion, Christ will come back to this earth. And his pure gospel will be taught by him. Every knee shall bow, every tongue shall confess that Jesus is the Christ. We believe that, as every other Christian faith does. One of the differences between the LDS faith and the Christian faith, and the normal Christian Baptists and whatnot faith, is that we believe that when you die, if you've never had the opportunity to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ as the LDS faith presents it, we believe that you are put into kind of a holding area, for lack of a better term, not purgatory. We call it the spirit world, where we all wait until Christ makes a final judgment, and then we're all given our final glory. So between that time, which would be today, and the time that Christ comes and these things all happen, people are up in spirit world, spirit paradise, or spirit prison, depending on your life in